Hello and welcome to Talk from Superheroes. Hey everybody, I'm Andrew Ivamy.
And I'm Diana McCullum.
And you're listening to Talk from Superheroes, where every week we discuss a piece of heroic television or film. And this week on the podcast, we are talking about The Kingsman.
The singular, the prequel,
there's
the new.
One dude in this movie.
It's just one guy.
It's one guy.
A black box theater film.
An Edinburgh Fringe Festival one-man show. It is just one man, and that man is the King's possessive man. It's the Kingsman.
But not really. It's actually just a prequel to the Kingsman movies from Matthew Vaughn.
That's right.
So this came out in December of 2021.
I believe after being delayed for 2 years.
After being delayed for 2 years, and right as it came out, theaters in Ontario closed.
Yes.
So we couldn't see it.
So we could. Some of the world could.
Some of the world did.
We couldn't.
We couldn't.
Nor would we have wanted to, really. So
It was on the schedule.
it was on the schedule. It's complicated. But yes, this was originally a Fox movie, then it was acquired by Disney, and then it was delayed, and then a global pandemic, and then delayed further, and then delayed further, and then it came out at a time when really just getting bounced around like a pinball up in there.
I love these ones that got bounced around. You got New Mutants, you got this one. The only really, I think, bounce around movie that did okay was Free Guy. Free Guy was a bounce around movie.
Oh yeah, Free Guy was a bounce around.
Because that was a Fox bought by Disney in the big buy.
Right.
The acquisition.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
The merger.
That's a purchase one. Yeah. For the merger purchase bounce arounds.
Yeah. Because that one got pushed back a lot. I think it was the only one that was like, oh, this was worth it. And then the rest of them were like, oh, we see what happened here.
Yes.
Disney was like, I guess we'll put them out.
Disney did not want to put this out. Okay. All right. Although there was one comedy, I think like Vacation Friends or something, that I think was in the purchase that they just dropped on Disney Plus or Disney Plus Stars at one point. It was actually not bad. But that's neither here nor there.
I didn't see that one.
So we're talking about The Kingsman, the third movie, but the first prequel of the Kingsman series of movies by Matthew Vaughn, which is available now on Disney Plus. Next week on the podcast, we are going to be talking about Morbius. So we're going to be back to new releases next week to talk about Morbius, which is coming out in theaters. And as well, if you want more vampires, we have been talking about Twilight over on our Patreon page. So if you check out patreon.com/fromsuperheroes, our monthly Patreon exclusive episode this month was on the first Twilight movie, which we had never seen. And there is vampire baseball, and it's completely insane. And you can check that out over at patreon.com/fromsuperheroes. But that's what's going on and what's coming up.
That's what's going on. And if you want the other Kingsman talk, we have covered the previous two on the podcast, on the regular free podcast before. So use that search function. Go find it. The King's got many men in those films.
Go track that bad boy down.
Those two bad boys.
Those bad boys for life. And as well, before we get into, they're old, you see. Before we get into today's episode of the podcast, we want to thank our wonderful sponsor of today's episode. It's our good friends. You know them. You love them. They're back. It's tpublic.com.
It's tpublic.com, where you're going to get your next favorite t-shirt or tank top or hoodie or whatever else you're putting a fun logo and piece of indie art on. And you're going to love the art, and you're also going to be like, I support an indie artist. That rules.
Yeah, because they're all getting commissions for their work, so you're getting something cool and unique, and the artist is getting paid. You can get apparel, like Diana mentioned. You can also get accessories like wall art, pillows, cell phone cases, and things like that. I'm a fan of the apparel myself. I've been stocking up on tank tops, just prepping for summer, getting ready. Just getting ready for sun's out. Got to have the guns out, ready for my fun's out. So I've been shopping at tpublic.com. And they've got great designs, like one that I am really liking this week. It is called Heartless Reflection. And it is a kind of anticipatory buzz for the new Doctor Strange movie. It is Doctor Strange pointing at evil Doctor Strange from the other dimension, doing the animated Spider-Man. They're pointing at one another, but it's two Stranges pointing at one another, being like, "Hey you," and the other one's like, "Hey you," but one's evil.
One's evil. One's the what if Doctor Strange.
Yeah, and the art style is really cool on this one. It does look like the world is like ripping around them as well, which is really fun.
My shirt this week is the Iceberg Lounge, known from Gotham. It says Gotham's finest nightclub. I can only describe it as like Art Deco, and it with like one of those title cards you'd see on Batman the Animated Series kind of style of animation.
Yes.
And it's really classic and it's really cool. And like you like the Iceberg Lounge in the Batman movie. It's a lovely design.
Other than the crime, it seems like a fine establishment.
I don't know why they pretended he couldn't go in there. It was just a regular nightclub.
It seems like a well-run nightclub for the most part.
It's a long-running business. So get your Iceberg Lounge shirt. It will never
Support
go
the
out
team.
of style.
Never goes out of style. It always is coming back. You can check out either of those designs and any of the ones we've previously mentioned on the podcast and a bunch other that we just recommend, we think are cool, some that we own ourselves. That's all on our storefront, which is over at tpublic.fromsuperheroes.com. teepublic.fromsuperheroes.com. And when you shop through that link, not only do you support the artist who designed that art, but you also directly support this podcast as well. So check it out, tpublic.fromsuperheroes.com. And thank you, TeePublic, for your support.
Thank you, TeePublic.
And now let's get into the episode. Let's talk about the Kingsman. All right, so we have seen the Kingsman. Diana is vibrating around the table. She has so much to say. So let's start with the simple question. Did you like it?
I hated this movie. Oh, I haven't hated a movie in a while. I've not liked a movie just fine. I've loved a movie. I've been medium on a movie. I haven't hated a film in a good long while. And it feels terrible, frankly. Didn't enjoy it. A bad way to spend 2 hours and 15 minutes, if I'm going to be honest about it. This movie sucked. I could not believe this was written and directed by Matthew Vaughn, because I quite enjoyed the other two Kingsman movie. I checked halfway through to be like, he did write and direct this one, right? It is a trash fire of a film. And I'm not even going to get into the specifics, because I just want you to be able to chime in so fast. Andrew, did you like The Kingsman?
This movie is piss.
Ooh, you don't get a lot of piss from Andrew.
This is piss. This movie is bad. My God, it is poorly written. It's poorly paced. It's poorly filmed. It's offensive. It is. I see what you're saying. It doesn't seem like it is written and directed by Matthew Vaughn, who made the other two, but it also very much does. It is all of his worst qualities and none of the redeeming qualities, because the first two movies of this series are not without their flaws, and some of their flaws are highly problematic ones that we've definitely goofed on this particular podcast. But this movie is the like oops all crunch berries, but just with the problematic elements of Matthew Vaughn, where it is just oops, just bad.
Yeah, it feels like, I will agree with you. It does feel like Matthew Vaughn, but it feels like Matthew Vaughn on a bad day, but every single day filming and writing was a bad day, I guess. Mm-hmm. Just like, I don't know if he's like getting less oversight the more movies he's allowed to make. And, like, people used to make him, like, cut things out and tone things down.
Sure.
Because, yeah, like, the first Kingsman, I think I really have very few issues with. That's very violent in a cool way, but, like, you know, there's one female Kingsman, and she's not even the love interest. I think maybe just, like, the anal sex joke at the end, I'm like, that's even still fine. It's like a consensual sex joke. They're just having anal sex. Mm. And then 2 had that one scene that I hated.
Right.
Just one. But like the rest of the movie still like
the one where he is honeypotting and trying to finger bang a tracking device into a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is a terrible scene, but the rest of the movie works. There's like a female villain, the fight scenes are good, there's an emotional resonance, one of the character dies. 2's still pretty good. And this doesn't work, this third film, in any way. The plotting doesn't work, the relationships don't work. There's only one fight scene I even liked. And yeah, it's just gross and upsetting for like 35 minutes, and it doesn't go anywhere for like an hour. The King's Man isn't introduced, society is introduced for 40 minutes. It's a terrible film. It is just wretched, and I was miserable while watching it.
So, for those of you listening, we are going to be spending today's episode we've got a lot of, I think, very funny things to say. We are going to be dunking on this movie, having a fun time. I think we found a couple of redeeming aspects that we're going to say, just so like we don't like these episodes when we're negative the whole time, but we're at least going to be goofing on it, just so you know. We're just going to have a fun time making fun of how insane this movie is. Because it's also like, it is fun to talk about how bad this is, because it is not like dry academic bad. It is cuckoo bananas. It went to insanely weird, why would you ever make a scene that bad places.
Yeah, it did some wild swings that the other Kingsman movies have not done in any way. Just like the mild historical accuracy, one actor playing all three sovereigns of the World War I countries is a weird choice. Like, they're not triplets.
Yeah.
What's up with this?
Why there is one? So yeah, like the Tsar. So Russia, Germany, and England leaders are all played by the same actor. Mm-hmm. Why one person is Eddie Murphying in the middle of this movie, I do not know. Why we have World War I with the clumps and
Tyler Perry's Leaders of Europe. What
makes,
is going on?
It makes no sense, and it is not silly in a funny way because they don't have fun with it. No one is like goofing about how like one cousin is like the other one's the ugly one, and like they're all in one scene together, and you're like, that must have been tricky to film. They take one photograph together once, then they are all in separate scenes alone where they do not reference or utilize the fact that they are all played by the same actor.
And one has an absolutely ridiculous mustache and accent, and the other two are fairly normal.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they're called the Morons as a trio, which is like their commentary on World War I. Like, we all thought World War I was great, and you're really telling us the real deal, the Kingsman.
So
we thought that was a good thing.
This at its core. So I want to have fun and pick apart this movie from its bones.
Let's autopsy this film.
Obviously, there's a ton of problematic elements. There's a ton of things that we're going to have issue with. At its core, before even a scene had been written, I think this is a bad premise for a Kingsman movie. Just a World War I prequel is idiotic from Jump Street to try to even do that, because the charm of 1 and 2 for the Kingsman is it gets to be hyper stylized caricature insanity. It is the most insane James Bond movie, not the grounded James Bond movies. You know, in 1, it's like we've got Samuel L. Jackson with a lisp, who's got cell phones that make people mad, heads explode, and a hench person who has knife legs. You're like, okay, this movie's insane, and it knows it, and we're having fun. And then in the second one, it's like, I can't even remember anymore, but it's like, we're collecting gold, we're doing a lasso alley-oop into a meat grinder with a human man.
I think it was pies that make you freeze. You can't move, you're paralyzed.
So pies that make you freeze, and in a fight scene, a man lasso alley-oops another man to be slam dunked into a meat grinder to make spaghetti. Insanely stylized, hyper-violent, does not exist anywhere near reality. Then the core premise is a dark and grisly exploration of the Great War with no fun. Like, there's no, it's not an alternate exploration of World War I where it's like, and also actually in World War I, the King of England had a mind control device, and it turns out Germany was making a spaceship to Mars. There is no fun to be had anywhere with any historical elements of this.
No, this is not, and you can do that and have fun. Like, Wonder Woman is like, Ares is causing the war, or Captain America is like, the Nazis are Red Skull and they're an extra division with super extra powers. Like, you have to add a fantastical element. But this movie is like, no, this is World War I. This is World War I, but we've all just made them a little bit silly. But there's like no magic, although maybe Rasputin had some. There's no magic. There's no like secret plot that they're trying to do. What's the Quentin Tarantino movie?
Inglourious Basterds. They're not trying to blow up Hitler.
Yeah, there's not like a secret fake mission they made. They're like, no, real historical things. Franz Ferdinand getting shot, we're there. This thing, we're there. Like, there's real stuff that happened trying to get England into the war. We're all there. And it's like, you need to come up with a fake mission because you can't be like, look how fun this fight scene is. And also, can you believe millions have died? I'm like, yeah, millions really died. And you're being actually dramatic about it. And you're saying that there's a real cost of war. But every other fight scene in Kingsman has been like, woohoo, violence!
Yeah.
The tone of these movies is always, woohoo, violence. You can't be like, fuck, World War I sucked.
Yeah. Or the tone of these movies are, look at the contrast of how terrible violence is while we show you woohoo violence. They might even have something to say about the woohoo violence. This does not have that. And I just can't comprehend why they would. So they use they use actual historical figures, and some of it is actually like historically accurate. But they don't have fun with that in any way other than doing bad things. Like, we'll unpack Rasputin later, and that's a terrible performance and a terrible choice, and it's not fun, but it's definitely not historical. But then they have stuff that they could have fun with, like the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, where it's like they tried to blow him up and they didn't, and then by chance he drives his car past the same assassin later, who just has a sweet second chance, and like that as a moment of history is fucking hilarious. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it led to terrible circumstances. The events surrounding it are not funny, but the serendipitous nature for an assassin is comedy gold, and they do the true event and don't make a joke or have any fun or sense of or whimsy about it whatsoever.
There is no like Benny Hill-esque, like he's just walking down the street and he's like, whoa, is that the Duke again? Maybe I'll just kill him. Like he is just sitting there because he fails in his first attempt, historically accurate. So historically, they tried to kill him the first time with like a big bomb. They failed, but they got away. The assassin went to go get a sandwich, and the Duke drove by again later the day. And he's like, I'll just shoot him now. So basically exactly what happens here, but there's so much comedy in that. And there's no comedy in this film about it. Like, he's just sitting there contemplating taking a cyanide pill. Then he looks up and there's the Duke, so he kills him. But it's like, this is the funniest thing that could ever happen to be historically accurate in a Kingsman prequel film. And you've taken no liberties with it. You've had no fun with it.
Yeah.
A franchise that is so good at being whimsically, violently fun.
And this is a man who has now eaten up 15 minutes of screen time to do a thing, and he's not a main, he's a baddie, he's only got a couple lines of dialogue, but it's like, I'll assassinate him, I didn't, shucks. Should I commit suicide? I won't. I murdered him, I'm in jail. And this is a nothing character, and it is a 15-minute journey that is not at all entertaining and is just wasted screen time. Like, if we saw a newspaper that actually just said, Franz Ferdinand assassinated, it accomplishes all of the exact same stuff in the story, moves it along quicker, and doesn't waste our time with a nobody character, a nothing performance, and a nothing series of events. I fucking hate this movie. It's piss.
I hated it because, yeah, you're so right about how the henchman is nothing, and most of the henchmen are nothing, which is wild for, as I said again, though, like a franchise where the henchmen are usually something. Like the girl with knife legs from the first one was so cool. Like the second one, like lassoing, that was a good guy, Channing Tatum. But like,
but they had like Cowboy Pedro Pascal as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he was doing that.
Yeah.
So like, there was just like so much going on with every side character usually, and a lot of the like bigger historical characters they've really made caricatures out of, and they're like, we're gonna mock Lenin and we're gonna mock this guy, but the fictional characters they've created that they can really like sink their teeth into, they did nothing with. They're just like, you're a bear and you're Marta and you have no lines. Girl who seduces the president.
Well,
literally none.
None of the women are given anything.
Oh boy.
Let's unpack that for a moment, shall we?
I knew this movie was bad in the first 7 minutes. In the first 6 minutes, I thought it might be good. Because in the first 6 minutes, we established Ralph Fiennes and his wife run the Red Cross. They're kind of pacifists, but they're still involved. They want to help people. I'm like, oh, seems very Kingsman-esque. I actually like where this is going. I like the vibes I'm getting. I really liked his wife.
Yeah, she was terrific.
Cool. She was like, I am like forceful in the way I want to help people, and I want to help them in the way I want to help them. I've got medical supplies. I've got money. I'm going to keep people alive. She is murdered in the first 7 minutes in front of her son and Ray Fiennes.
To motivate her husband and son, they've brought fridging back in the year 2022. They were like, what's the inciting incident of a movie? Fridging.
And what will we do? Have one other woman in this film besides her. So the second they killed this mother, I was like, this movie's gonna suck.
Yeah.
I don't like the other characters. Actually, I kind of like Djimon Hounsou, but he's always good.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like instantly I was like, oh, okay. So Matthew Vaughn and Mark Millar are back on their fucking bullshit. They're like, we don't like women in this franchise bullshit. I really feel like studio interference is the only reason Lancelot, the girl in the first one's any cool. Because they kill her right off the beginning of the second one.
Yeah.
So like their history with women in these films is so poor.
Fridging and sex objects are the only purpose that women
do.
exist. And it is just nasty. Just absolutely nasty. And it's embarrassing. Like, and I'm with you. It was 6 minutes in. I'm like, oh, this movie's a sack of shit. Okay. Yeah, fuck you. All right.
And it almost wasn't. I was like, she's cool.
Yeah.
Wow, you've made a well-rounded woman with agency who's badass on her own terms.
And it was one of the best performed characters, with the exception of Djimon Hounsou, who you mentioned briefly as well. And I agree, he always gets the assignment and is fucking. He's one of the highlights of this movie. Like, just to take a quick sidestep to be positive for a minute, Djimon Hounsou, mwah, chef's kiss.
What a career.
Unbelievable.
What a career to just always be like the third or fourth lead in tons of blockbusters and always be crushing it. Like,
yes.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
He's so cool, and that's a cool career.
And he's been in good movies. He's been in bad movies like this one. But he always gets the assignment, and he always nails it. And it really is on everyone else making the movie to match what he is doing.
Yeah.
And you can match what he's doing and be a great movie, or you can be a bad movie that had Djimon Hounsou in it. And that's it.
There's tons of those, too.
There's tons of those.
There's both. Because right off the bat, like, he has this charm and warmth when the little kid is like, I'd be Arthur and you'd be Merlin. He'd be like, I'd be Merlin. And he has this like warmth and charm to him in that one.
He feels more like a father than Ralph Fiennes does.
Yes, he does. And then he's like instantly badass and he kills this sharpshooter that's been shooting at them. You're like, oh, you're multi-leveled, but you also get like very little to do in this film.
Yeah, and also an absolutely beautiful man for a man in his 50s, just shredded to shit, unflinchingly doing shirtless scenes and looking hotter than the young hottie that they've cast opposite him.
Which is crazy because, like, as I said, he's not the lead and he's never the lead, but he is constantly jacked. Like, he's in Gladiator. And he's incredible. And Gladiators were like, I'm scared to say, like, almost 30 years ago now, probably.
I'd say that's
I don't have
about
it open, but like that's an incredible span of having like Chris Evans level abs when you're not a lead, being like getting trainers and things.
And that says that's just his life. He's just living shredded 24/7. Like he doesn't.
Djimon the Shredder Hounsou.
Like he doesn't get a memo from his agent being like, this next one is a shirtless scene, so start prepping. He shows up day of, and they're like, pop that top, and he's like, I live ready.
Always.
He lives ready. Just an incredibly attractive, incredibly ripped man, and a wonderful actor who always gets the assignment.
So yes, this movie is not bad because of him.
No, he's doing wonderful stuff. But yeah, they fridge the wife, who next to Djimon is the best actor in the movie as well.
Yes,
like
she is.
She has authority, and I agree with you. Like the performance that she brings, it has gravity, it has authority, but it does also have a fun playfulness. Like it has this like I am in a historically sexist setting and I'm kind of fighting it, but I have this like Peggy Carter kind of energy and fuck you vibe about me, and she nails this one scene that she has before she's fridged to motivate boys.
It is absolutely upsetting that she is killed in that way. Yeah, because she even like gets the well, she kind of says the thesis statement of what the movie is supposed to be, which isn't really what the movie becomes at all, which is that the rich should use their powers to like help people more than they do. They should be on the front lines because they're privileged, which, yeah, go for it. Love that, lady. The rest of the movie is very weird and kind of like a weird shift away from what Kingsman is, because Kingsman is supposed to be like the elite are spies and the elite are doing this. And the rest of this movie is servants do everything?
Right.
And
I'm one rich person who has had a bunch of lesser paid people risk their lives for me.
Across the world, across
while me
Europe,
and my son remain safe and secure and away from
Europe,
battle.
in the United States, all of these servants are risking their lives and created this spy network. But it's weird because this is the prequel of the founding, but the first movie, the one about Eggsy, is like, Eggsy's the first non-rich person to be a Kingsman. But I'm like, but you were founded on servants doing all of the work.
Yeah.
I don't understand how this is the origin of the Kingsmen if it's not a bunch of rich dudes working together.
It doesn't make any sense at all.
It doesn't make any sense.
Because if anyone gets in trouble, it is a bunch of poor people and servants who are going to get hanged, and a rich man and his son who are completely safe and insulated from any trouble whatsoever.
Yeah, and Ralph Fiennes even has a line. He's like, my reputation is as a pacifist, so no one thinks I'm a spy when I go to these places. I'm like, that's great for you. What about this maid you've gotten to spy on the president of the United States?
Yeah.
She's going to be shot in the head if anyone finds out about this. Yeah, where are your rich dudes helping you out, buddy?
It doesn't happen until the end of the movie, and I guess, I don't know. This as an origin story, I want to unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
This is an origin story is idiotic.
Yes.
Absolutely meandering idiocy. Because the Kingsmen are, as you mentioned, a secret spy organization. The structure of this movie, it starts with murdering a woman to motivate boys.
Of course.
Then Ralph Fiennes, as Orlando Oxford, is raising his son.
I feel like we never mentioned his name was Orlando.
It never comes up. Is raising his son. Harris Dickinson is the actor, and the character is Conrad. So Ralph Fiennes is raising his son, Conrad, and is like, we're pacifists. We don't get involved. We just don't want to be part of it. Then, when World War I happens, his son wants to enlist and go on the front line and be a hero and thinks it's very romantic to go off to war. And Ralph Fiennes eventually has to be like, actually, okay, I was lying to you the whole time. We already have a secret spy organization. And even though it's not officially named the Kingsmen, but it's already happened. Like, it's done. This air quote origin story begins in the first act by being like, and it's already a thing, don't worry about it. It's like, oh, okay.
He doesn't start it with his son. It's not like he goes to his son and he's like, let's do good ourselves with pacifism, or like, we'll start it ourselves. Because the son is also too old, too young to enlist. So legally he can't even join. But yeah, for him to like show his son this whole network, I'm like, well, where's the actual prequel start then?
Yeah.
When do we form this group? Because you did it off screen again.
It's just happening. They did it off screen, and it's just happening. Don't ask questions. It's already happening. But they don't want you to ask questions. But then also they restart that plot line multiple times. So it's like, it's this group. It's the Kingsmen, even though they don't officially have the name. But it is the spy network trying to prevent wars and help people. And then his son Conrad is murdered at the war, and we can talk more about that in a minute. But his son Conrad goes off to war and is murdered. Ralph Fiennes gets drunk for several days, and then is like, you know what? I am gonna to honor my son Conrad. I am gonna do something in memory of him, and I, in memory of him, am going to start a network of spies. And then he just goes downstairs and continues the network of this is supposed to be the darkest night of his soul, where he's like, I have to do something to honor my son. And all he does is go into the next room where the thing already exists that honors his son. So that's an idiotic launching point. And then we end this movie with a third. Now it's really time to start the Kingsmen, where he officially names them and brings in some fucks that we've barely had a scene with, which is also idiotic. So we get 3 idiotic introductions to the Kingsmen in this Kingsman prequel.
And never the actual beginning of the Kingsman.
None of them really.
When when did you and your servants decide to start a spy network? Like, when did this happen? Because it doesn't seem like you had the spy network in the very first flashback when your wife was killed. So at some point in between then, you started the real Kingsmen, and we haven't seen that in the prequel. And also the story, I agree, the storyline of the founding of the Kingsmen doesn't make any sense. The story of Ralph Fiennes' character arc doesn't make any sense, because he's constantly like, I'm going to start the Kingsmen. He's like, he says, I'm a pacifist. And then later his son goes to war and has died. And then he kind of states, he's like, I'm not a pacifist anymore. Now I'm going to kill. And I'm like, you already stabbed Rasputin in the heart before your son died. You already had turned away from pacifism. You already had gone to the assassination of Franz Ferdinand and beat up the guards and tortured that guy. Like, you dropped pacifism, like, 35 minutes ago before your son died. There's
Diana,
no arc here.
Now he's a little sad after he does a murder.
Now he's a little sad boy.
Is his big character arc is that he used to be a murdering colonizer, feels somewhat apologetic for it. Now he has servants do things for him, and he's a little sad when he murders white people. So now that's his big arc. That's his big arc.
What a hero.
What a fucking dick.
What an asshole.
Absolutely fuck all of the people in this movie. They're all shit, and I hate every hero.
Other things he does several times, make sure his son will not die when he goes to war. Asks like leading military people, like, don't let my son sign up for the military, please. And they're like, oh yeah, of course not. He's rich. He can't go to the military. Asks his like cousin, and his cousin's like, oh no, I'll make him work in an office. Like, the only reason the son dies is because he switches identity with a poor soldier.
Yeah, he has to
actively try to get killed because he's rich, privileged.
To steal the identity of a poor person to get their murder.
Yeah.
To take the murder of theirs.
How do I get myself killed, I say?
Oh,
I'm so
I know.
rich and white.
I have to pretend to be a poorer person is the only option that this movie has nothing to say about.
Nothing to say. Because the theme of this movie is like, rich people are cool sometimes.
Yeah, look how much good we did.
Yeah, look, secretly, rich people are cool.
Yeah.
They won't tell you. Like, their network is secret. So, like, but just so you know, all rich people, they're probably pretty cool.
And especially when the core inciting incidents of this, incidences of this movie are, we have a spy network and we're going to stop World War I. And spoiler alert, they don't. This movie remains relatively factually accurate in the fact that World War I still insists on happening and many people die, leaving the Kingsmen a completely inept and unsuccessful spy organization in this film.
That's the other thing about already having the Kingsmen basically fully formed when we meet them, is that it does mean they fail through the entirety of World War I. Like, it's not like we're near the end and then they form the Kingsmen and like, we can end this war. We're the new Kingsmen. It's like, we've been working on this for literally 4 years. We've been a fully fledged corporation since day one. We couldn't stop Franz Ferdinand from getting killed. We kind of stopped Rasputin, but it didn't matter. The thing he was trying to do still happened.
Yeah.
Like, all of World War I still completely played out. Like, they didn't give them just like, until the very end, they didn't just give them one silly mission, like, one like, we're gonna make sure London doesn't get bombed or something. Like, just give them one big secret mission that they need to stop.
Let them have a win.
Yeah.
Because the secret mission that they air quote stop at the end of this movie is killing a dude who is just encouraging other figures of World War I, which...
Hey, he also has a sex tape of the American president.
And they managed to destroy that.
That is the climax of the World War I action movie is, we got the sex tape, you guys.
Yep.
That's their goal.
Yep.
Not like stop an invasion, not get supplies, not anything. It's like, we gotta get the sex tape.
Because Matthew Vaughn only has one idea what spies do, and it is just honeypotting. Like, literally, like, it is... Ian Fleming writes a spy novel that's like, spies fuck, but also international diplomacy is quite difficult. Matthew Vaughn stops at spies fuck. Like, as far as Matthew Vaughn is concerned, a spy's only job is to be a sexy, little, fuckable spy, and that's it. That is it. You do nothing else.
Yeah, the incredible fight scenes are just filler.
The incredible fight scenes are only for when the honeypot fails. Step 1, try to fuck. Step 2, maybe something else happens, improvise. Go back to base, think about when you can fuck again.
Yeah, and Matthew Vaughn is Rasputin.
Yeah.
Can we talk about Rasputin?
Let's go into Rasputin in this one.
This is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
This is the Rasputin section of this movie, which is way too, like, he's around a little bit at the beginning, and it is Rhys Ifans just chewing scenery.
Famously, the lizard in Spider-Man No Way Home. Big month for Rhys Ifans in December 2021.
Big month. Chewing scenery, doing an insanely bad Russian accent, terrible mannerisms, generally awful, but in a way that maybe if it didn't have this writing, it could work, because I think one of the potentially fun things about this movie is that they do silly caricatures of historical figures, but they don't lean into it enough. You know, they're like,
land.
check out Lenin and Woodrow Wilson, and we have Rasputin, and it doesn't land, but it could. Doing a purposefully bad performance like he is doing could have worked with the right script.
I agree. There is a movie in here somewhere where it's very funny how they've made fun of all of these historical figures, and this movie's not it.
Yeah.
Not a single one of them lands, but yeah, so he's done a terribly, like, just hard to watch version of Rasputin, who's like too mumbly, but also too sexual, too abruptly. I have literally so many things to unpack about this long-ass Rasputin section. I think we have to start at the thing that upsets me most, though, if I may, which is because you talked about the honeypot.
Starting with the honeypotting your son, your underage son.
Your underage son. So and there's also like a weird, you're honeypotting your underage son to a man, and I actually would love a man-on-man honeypot scene.
Right.
Like, this would be an incredibly progressive, cool, like a genuine one. Like an actual, like, we have to honeypot a man.
A homosexual honeypot scene would be as progressive as Matthew Vaughn's writing could possibly get. And that's not saying much, but it would be something.
But this is a man-on-man honeypot scene that is mildly homophobic, I'd say, because it's funny that you're honeypotting a man.
It's I'm going to say very
homophobic. It's weird to say because they never actually have sex or kiss or anything, so I'm like, it's all implication, but it is a homophobic nature of a joke.
Yes.
So yeah, that is terrible. But the worst part is, even if you're doing a bad honeypot, I can live with that. Or if you're, what I can't live with, though, is his underage son, too young to enlist in the military, but they're like, Rasputin's going to like him, though. And they just sit him next to Rasputin, and they're like, see if he'll fuck you, and then get him to eat this poison cake. And then Rasputin's not interested, so he's like, I want to fuck Ralph Fiennes instead. So then they go to the poison cake room to have sex, and it's like, but then there's like the element of your son's now overhearing you potentially honeypotting a dude, and that's gross. Like, not funny gross, that's just gross.
And then there is the fact that you're all idiots.
You're all idiots.
So one thing that I will like immediately unpack, which is just a hugely problematic thing that people do when it comes to the homosexual community, which is the fact that Ralph Fiennes' character, like on the train, is like Rasputin, and I don't even know if this is historically or famously true. I don't know if Rasputin was gay or bi or poly or whatever. I knew he used to have like famous sex parties, I think was a thing. But either way, they're on the train. He's like, well, he likes men, so that means he likes boys. And that is a wildly dangerous and homophobic thing that very homophobic people say about a gay person, to be like, gay people like underage boys, and that is not cool. It is a piece of shit thing to write that a piece of shit character would say. And it's not meant to portray that in any way. And it is incorrect. It shows that they are dumb fuck spies, that Rasputin is just a average homosexual man, maybe with a weird food fetish, but is not at all into underage boys, and you are all homophobic assholes for having presumed that about him.
Yeah.
But the movie doesn't have anything to say or does not know. The movie is not aware that they are being homophobic assholes for assuming that a gay man prefers the company of underage boys.
Yeah, the movie has nothing to say about anything. But
Yeah.
the movie, it's wild that this is a 2021 film. Like, this movie feels like LXG, like 2002 era. Like, we didn't know any better, or like no one had any oversight on these kind of jokes or these kind of scenes. And like the whole thing lands so flat and offensive and gross and just uncomfortable for so many levels of blatant
homophobia.
Homophobia, not homosexual. Not blatant homosexuality. Blatant
That would be fine.
That'd be fine. I want a dude on dude honeypot James Bond films
Yes.
or later Kingsman films, like Mission Impossible films. I don't care what I need.
Yeah.
That's cool, like a real one. It's not a joke to be gay. This movie is just so. I don't know how this many people can be in a scene and be that unaware of like what you're doing is incredibly wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the level of family, the level of parenthood, the level of homophobia, the level of just comfort of this scene, because then Rasputin performs what I can only describe as cunnilingus on Ralph Fiennes' bullet wound, which is...
After he ate a cake like a cob of corn?
Yeah.
Which sounds funny, and it wasn't.
And here's
not.
the other thing to unpack about this scene is that it starts and continues with a lot of offensive homophobia. And they're like, we have to do the homophobia because the premise of this scene is we need Rasputin to eat a cake. And that has nothing to do with fucking. Like, it is Underpants Gnomes level of logic jump where they're like, Ralph Fiennes is like, I need him to fuck my son. Because if he doesn't fuck my son, when would he eat a pie? And I don't know why those things are connected in the writing of this movie. Why is it you fuck my son, then of course you will eat pie? Why don't you just serve the man pie?
Ray Fiennes even, I agree. They have no idea how to get a man to eat pie and seem desperate to have Rasputin fuck them. Because Ray Fiennes goes into the room with him alone. He's like, I'll heal your leg, or whatever he says. And he's like, ooh, that cake looks good. And Ray Fiennes says, we can have a cake after you heal my leg. Instead of saying, want to eat some cake right now before the very sexual innuendos happen and you like caress my leg and lick it and do weird things and probably have sex after that. Like, you could just be like, yeah, the cake's right there. Why don't we eat the cake? And no one says like, let's just eat the cake. Rasputin has to be the one to say, I'm going to eat the cake.
Yeah. Yep. Because no one's bringing up the cake.
I mean, you know what? And this
If you just left that cake in that room.
He probably ate it.
Because he walked into a room that had cake and was like, yum, yum, I'm a boy who likes cake. I'm Rasputin, and I fucking eat cake that's left in my room. Because why wouldn't I?
And there's a way where this scene is genuinely funny. Like this, it's wild.
As we're describing it other than the
sounds
homophobia, it sounds funny. It sounds like it's like, what? He does cunnilingus on a bullet wound while eating a pie? That's very farcical. It is in no way. In no way is it fun or funny.
But there's a version of this that is. Because what you just said is very funny. We're a new spy network, and we think we have to fuck him before he'll eat this cake. But better spies would be like, we could probably just serve him the cake, like at the end of the meal. We'll give him the poison cake.
Yeah.
And we never have to have sex with him.
At all.
There's no reason.
And the awkward tension in the room is us just like waiting on when he's going to eat cake. And maybe he offers us a slice, but we've poisoned the cake. But we need him to not be suspicious. So now I'm eating a poison cake, but trying not to swallow it while making eye contact to see. Like, there is so many, a million different ways that spy movies have done or could do this scene.
Mm-hmm. And we absolutely did not mention that while doing cunnilingus on the leg, he throws up the cake.
Yeah.
In like the way that they do it, like really projectile-y, like hard throw up.
Yeah, it's the way like a cat vomits.
You think this is a real way anything vomits? This is a very, to me, like made for film way of vomiting.
I think it's made for film in the sense that it is meant to be funny that a human would vomit this way, but it is like a dump truck just opened, so it's just like bah, and too much. And too much came out too quickly, and then Rasputin carries on his day. It's just like, sorry about that, because his accent's terrible. But I think that is very like how a cat vomits, where it's just like, blah, and then just like, it is then like, oh, what was I eating lunch? Like the cat doesn't care and has no attachment to or embarrassment about what just happened.
Oh, shit. All right, maybe he is like a cat. All right, Rasputin
A little
the cat.
bit cat-like. The final bananas thing about this whole sequence of events is that by performing cunnilingus on Ralph Fiennes' bullet wound on his leg, so we start this movie with murdering his wife to motivate him, and in that scene he also gets shot in the leg. Then he spends an hour of this movie walking with a limp and a cane, and his leg hurts when it's cold, and it's like that leg is all fucked up from the bullet wound. By performing cunnilingus on the leg, Rasputin sincerely heals his leg permanently forever. He actually mouth-fucked his leg healthy. And then this character just doesn't use a cane and is healthy for the rest of the movie. So why the fuck did we have him get shot in the beginning of the movie? There's no reason for him to have a limp or a cane or any of these characteristics.
No, because he was also introduced 100%. There's no reason to do this because he was introduced as a pacifist, a man who doesn't fight. So it didn't really matter that he got shot in the leg because pacifists don't fight. You don't need to be good at martial arts and be able to do spinny things and whatever. He decides to get back into the war even when his leg is hurt. When he goes to kill Rasputin, his leg is hurt. When he goes to interrogate the spy who killed Franz Werner, his leg is hurt. So the leg isn't stopping him from doing things.
Yep.
But then it's fixed, and now he can do the things he's already doing a little bit better, but nothing
with no
changed.
cane. Nothing changes.
Nothing changed. This whole cane plot point.
Nothing, but that's so indicative of this movie that nothing changes anything and the plot's just doing whatever and it's completely irrelevant. That it's like, we're going to stop World War I. You don't. You don't do that. World War I just happens. We're going to start the Kingsmen by already having started it. Okay, so I guess that's done and you did it and I didn't see it and whatever. I'm going to have a limp. No, I don't. Okay, well then why did I care? Why are we doing any...
This movie is a parallel between me and my son and our different takes on war. The son died halfway through. One of the main characters just cut out. Okay, so it's not about that. All right? This movie has no idea what it is, but acts like it does.
Yeah.
It's a real dick that way. It's like, I know exactly who I am. And you're like, who are you? And they're like, if you can't figure it out, I can't explain it to you.
I'm the same person I was yesterday when you weren't here. Yesterday I did some stuff that really defined me as a person, and I'm that same person today. I'll tell you that. Maybe some stuff will happen tomorrow, but you don't know. But today, don't worry about it.
And then like other things that were like, they did not elevate the historically accurate ridiculous things. Like, it kind of was hard to kill Rasputin, but it wasn't hard enough because I think historically it was like 3 bullets, 18 stab wounds. He'd also been poisoned and it took like 18 hours to kill him. Like, historically, this man could not be killed. So the fact that it's just like 1 stabbing and then a bullet, I was like, come on. It has to be like 18 stabbings or something. Like, if you're going to elevate these ridiculous things.
And when you end with bullet, obviously that did it. The bullets are very famously good at doing a murder. Mm-hmm. That's a thing bullets are known for.
Yeah, but like put more stuff in before the bullet. Mm-hmm. But also then that scene would have been longer.
Yeah,
whoa.
but also there's ways to do a joke about it. Like, you're at this big fanciful party in Prussia. Like, have a gossip there, like one who exaggerates details over dinner. And that's a joke. Like, you can have like Ralph Fiennes to be like, I've tried to get spy information from the servants working for this guy or girl, and it's like, all of the details are exaggerated. It is painful. This person tells a tale. And then like have that person find Rasputin's body and come out and be like, he's been shot 8 times. They've been stabbing him for days. Like, what? Add a funny thing. Add a funny thing.
add a funny thing or add even anything. Like he's secretly wearing a bulletproof vest to explain how he got stabbed so many times or literally anything. But instead they're just like, it was kind of hard to kill him. He did a funny little dance fight, which the scene before had been so gross, I couldn't even watch. Like, I'm sure it actually was like a pretty good choreography, like fun idea for a fight where he's doing like the Russian kind of like squat dance while fighting.
Yeah, a dance-inspired fight sequence.
Yeah.
And it was fine.
They're breakdance fighting.
Yeah, it was fine. I was watching it was fine. Another thing that it does in that sequence, and it does in a couple fight sequences in this movie that I frankly don't understand, and it almost seems like a child was doing an impression of Matthew Vaughn's directing. Because in the other Kingsman movies, they have these big, elaborate one-shots. And I air quote one shot because it is meant to be like one comedically long scene or take where they have like all those sneaky edits where a body goes in front of the camera. So it's not actually filmed in one take, it's filmed in sections, but they try to hide where the edit is. The camera doesn't jump angles. It's meant to
the Colin Firth church fight.
Exactly.
Crazy good.
A big oneer, and it has a bunch of edits in it, but it never changes angle. The edits are always like a guy falls into the camera, and then when that person steps forward, it's sneakily the start of a new day of filming or a new scene. This movie uses that technique that someone falls towards the camera, their black jacket covers the camera lens for a second, and everything goes black. Then they move forward, the jacket comes off, and it's actually the beginning of a new shot. And this film does that a bunch in scenes that are not oneers. So it's like there's no reason to have done it because it will be a camera angle and the action moves forward for about 2 seconds. Then someone falls and they do a sneaky edit. And then that person walks away from the camera and then they just cut to a new camera angle. So they're just doing this like, it looks like the sneaky edits that the other movies had, but not in one big fight sequence.
And in a way that's hard to notice, but you do go, I think something just happened.
There, but why did you do a sneaky edit in what was only 3 seconds of film? You didn't need to have an edit in 3 seconds of film. The church scene is 8 minutes of film, and you need to have sneaky edits. Why are you doing this here? It doesn't make any sense, and it just looks, visually it looks bad.
And also, like, what was with all the zooms? What was with all the zooms, Matthew Vaughn? Over and over again. You zoom, you're in a ship, and then you zoom out, and you're like, oh, we're going underwater, and then you see that there's a submarine coming, and you go through the submarine portal, and then you go into the torpedo, and then you go, like, past even that, and you're like, now I'm in England. Like, the camera just keeps going.
It never stops moving.
And that would be cool, like, maybe once. You'd be like, oh, wow, they really worked hard on that one shot. They do it, like, 18 times.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like I was in that episode of Simpsons where he's like, another star wipe, but with zooms. Just...
And completely unmotivated because...
Because revealing nothing.
In the first two, they use that style, that similar style of like zoom in further into a room, but it'll be that style in the sense of like a spy is outside of a room and is listening through a keyhole, and we see the spy, and it's like now we as an audience have been given the information there is a spy outside. Then a camera zooms in through the keyhole into the room, and it's all a digital door and a digital keyhole because you can't move. It's the impossible camera. You can't move the camera through that. Isn't that kind of fun? But in the previous movies, it would relay information. Like there's a spy outside of the room, there is a keyhole, you know now where people are, what is happening, and who's listening to whom. And in this one, it's just like, oh shit, here's the Earth. You know what the Earth has? The Earth has trees. Let's go towards the trees. What's below the tree? It's a person. What's inside of the tree? It's a bomb. It's not blowing up. Don't worry about it. Over there's a mountain. What's closer to the mountain is a shack. Inside the shack is a bathroom, and the bathroom is a man peeing. I'm like, but none of it means anything. We're just zip-zopping around.
Zopping around because it kind of looks cool sometimes. And you're absolutely right. It is completely unmotivated. You learn nothing. Maybe the torpedo one, you learn there's a torpedo coming, but we also just see the ship explode. Like, it's not like a torpedo coming from like, oh no, an ally or someone you thought was an ally. It's like, the shepherd guy who's like been killing everyone.
Yeah.
That's not surprising. He's the main villain of the movie. Yeah, the one that went through like 18 forests to get to the girl, and you're like, well, yeah, we knew it was far.
Yeah,
Europe's big.
And like it would go through a forest and be like, you know what's back there? A second forest. I'm like, but I already saw a forest. So
why are you padding time on this over 2-hour movie with more forests?
So bloated a movie. Oh my God. Now, one positive I will give this movie that I actually do enjoy is in the middle of this movie. And it maybe should have been the beginning of this movie, but in the middle of this movie, when the son, character of Conrad, played by Harris Dickinson, when Conrad goes to war, him at war, I actually like. The No Man's Land sequence with the weird kind of creepy knife fight. It's a silly premise, but it's silly enough to be real and uncomfortable, but in a way that kind of works. It's stylized in a way that actually does feel like the other movies, where it's hyper-violence for caricaturistic state, and that functions for me. And even up to and including the surprise death of Conrad, I really like that as a startling revelation. So I enjoy I'm switching identities, I'm going to war, I'm at war, I'm crying in the trenches because this is not the honorable, a gentlemanly thing that I thought it was. My father was right, oh God, and then I'm dead. This whole sequence really works for me, and I think it's filmed well.
I completely agree, and I'm almost sad that that's your positive because it was my only positive as well. So we've got one net positive.
And Djimon Hounsou.
Oh, and Djimon Hounsou.
We got two net positives.
All right, two net positives.
Yeah.
Two, way to go. But yes, actually, I completely agree. The trench warfare entire sequence is fantastic. And you're right, it is the only time they find that level of like cool violence that feels a little bit elevated, but not like silly, but also like a little bit grounded. This very fine line that he walked in the first two movies that actually works of we're fighting in no man's land. If we shoot our guns, the guys in the trenches will just machine gun us. So we have to have a knife fight in silence against Nazis, or not Nazis, it's World War I, against the Germans in the trenches. And it's like a cool idea. And the choreography's great. And then there's just like really upsetting moments that are upsetting in a good way. Like when he's like pushing the knife slowly into the other guy. And he's like, please, no, 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 no. And it's very upsetting because, like you said, he thinks it's this romantic, like I'm fighting villains, I'm saving people. And it's boys his own age who just don't want to die. It's super upsetting. Like the truth of war is here. And if the whole movie was this trench sequence, this would be a fantastic film.
And I think also one of the only sequences that has something to say as well.
Yeah.
Which, and you know, what it's saying is not revolutionary, but what it's saying is war is not glamorous. And the people who tell you that it is are the ones who want you to die for them. Mm-hmm. They're not the ones who are on the front lines. It is the rich aristocrats who are safely at home who tell you that it's glamorous to go there and die, and who give you the awards when you come back, or give the awards to your family for not. And you know, it's a simple premise. It's been said before, but it tells that story, I think, functional and in a way that succeeds. And I actually think that Harris Dickinson does a good job of this character at war. Like, he plays the character kind of too flat and straight. He plays it like a drama, and it doesn't really work until this section. And then suddenly I'm like, oh, I get why you did this performance. I get why you're playing it the way you're playing it. It's because this is the best section of the movie and you're playing it for that.
Yeah, he didn't find any of the comedy of a Matthew Vaughn film, but like this movie doesn't work anyway. So it's like, it's good that he saved it for the trench sequence to be like, I'm a dramatic character. Yes. And this scene is going to knock your socks off. I'm going to lay in the arms of an older soldier who's consoling me, who has lost his leg, but I'm the one who's fucked up because it's my first battle.
Yeah.
Is like a thing not a lot of movies would like go to, as like a revelation of like what war does to you and how it fucks you up. And even just like the tragedy of he doesn't save that guy. The last bomb kills him.
Yeah.
So like all this like heroic actions don't always even pay off. Also happens. Like, yeah, this one like 10-minute sequence
the
is
misunderstanding
crazy.
that gets him killed
my
as
God.
well
The
is
fact
brutal.
the fact that he like was trying to do almost a good thing of like, I will not use my privilege to stay alive. I'm going to go to the front. But, people are spies and it's not a good idea to have a fake accent when people are
a
looking
bad fake
for
accent and a fake name that you've stolen from a real people who have real friends and squad mates.
when I don't think you've been to Scotland and probably don't know any of the stuff you're supposed to know about it. So yeah, maybe not a great idea to do that. Maybe instead of finding a guy who physically looked like you, be like, who here is from where I live? I need that information. But yeah, so like, yeah, a real tragic story in the middle of this, and like, geez, just stop watching the movie at that point, or like, Rasputin's already happened. Yeah, start watching. Because honestly,
it's just watch that point.
Just watch that point. Honestly, the whole thing to get the sex tape is dumb, but it's also like fine.
Yeah, it's
like
entire.
The parachuting section is like fine. There's goats. It's kind of silly. It doesn't really work. Like you hate this movie by this point, so like that sequence will never work. But it's like fine.
And the big twist of the movie is that the villain is a character that we kind of met before once, maybe, whatever.
Who wasn't even friends with Ray Fiennes. His boss was.
Yeah.
So it's not like Ray Fiennes is like, oh no, my old friend Matthew Good. It's like, oh, my old friend's, what were you, like his secretary or something? I saw you once, right?
I saw you once in a place with a thing. Okay.
Oh, okay. I think I've seen you around. And his motivations were fucking hilarious.
And it was all for a free Scotland that he started World War I.
This guy started World War I because he hated England because like English people like killed his parents or whatever. He's like, I'm going to start World War I so that Germany will invade England and kill English people. And very explicitly it is shown that a bunch of Scottish people went to World War I. He absolutely got all of his own people killed in this war.
Yeah.
And he was still like, I did it. Yeah, nailed it.
And then, but also, he doesn't even really have a big plan. He's just kind of like, hey, Lenin, I don't know, man, you seem like an agent of chaos. Go to Russia. Like, he doesn't tell Lenin what to do. Like, he doesn't tell anyone what to do, really. He's like, I would like a war. I've gathered some people who I think will change things. Go back to where you're from, which they would have done if he didn't call them there. They receive no further direction or assistance in any way.
Yeah, like he says things like, Marta, go do what you do. And I'm like, what did you want Marta to do? Marta's the woman who seduced the American president.
Right,
but like, he doesn't give her explicit instructions. Like, did Marta walk out of that room like, what the fuck does he want me to do? I like George Costanza when his boss like said all the instructions in the toilet.
Yeah.
He was just like,
all right.
I can't go back in there and ask him because I smiled really smugly when he said do what you do, but that could mean anything.
I'm just gonna go honeypot someone. That's the only thing us spies do.
We are the honeypot spies. Everybody honeypots. Da, da, da. Time for the honeypot. Even if you're an underage boy. Honeypot time.
Yeah.
Oh, that was another thing I wanted to bring up. But
what?
it was during the Rasputin part. The other thing that made that so gross is, honestly, until Rasputin spoke, this movie was like PG-13. And like the violence hadn't been all that violent. There had been no sexual stuff. There'd been no swearing. And then Rasputin showed up and it was like, we fuck like tigers. And they just said fuck so much and it became so visceral so suddenly.
Yeah.
It was really, and like with the 16-year-old boy is when that happened as well. And your dad's right there, that your dad's involved. So like everything that happened that was gross, like just happened so abruptly and so huge compared to everything else. Because nothing else in this film had been gross or sexual or like mature until that moment. Like I thought this was a PG-13 Kingsman movie until that moment.
Yeah, it was a quiet reflection on the horrors of war, and then Austin Powers Rasputin shows up. R-rated Austin Powers. It is just Mike Myers doing Fat Bastard, but as a Russian, where he's just like, I like to fuck! And I'm like, okay, Mike Myers, I don't like this new character of yours.
But in a franchise where, like, a sex scene will happen, and it's involving an underage boy, and I'm like, are you gonna fuck this boy?
It's all
Please, Mike Myers, don't do it.
Mike Myers. I'm now reimagining all of these scenes, but it's Mike Myers, and it's
more tolerable.
It's a little more tolerable. It's still upsetting, but it's a little better. My God, this movie is just top to bottom a mess. Other than that middle section, and yeah, the ending is just like whatever. It's a weird surprised that a random character is the villain and the fight scene is only okay. And
there's a goat saves the day.
Yeah.
And he's mean to the goats, and I hated that.
I also hated that.
Because he kept talking about how he loved his goats, and then he'd be mean to his goats.
Yeah.
And then also, how long they didn't show his face was fucking ridiculous.
It became annoying and not like
was
within the
never
first
cool.
scene. It was never cool. It was immediately annoying.
Yeah, because the first scene, it's like you can't see his face. I'm like, okay, but then the first scene is like 7 minutes long of not showing a villain's face, and the camera's constantly moving and showing like his henchmen who they are. And it's like, well, you can't see his face though. I'm like, all right.
And then once we see his face, and it's like, it was the British guy's second in command. And you're like, okay. And it shows like the reveal of all of the scenes that he was in earlier. And it's 2 scenes, and one of them is just him alone in a blank room taking off a wig. And I'm like, I guess it was a wig. Like removing his own hair was meant to be a big reveal. And I'm like, okay, but like he could have just been a character who had a shaved head / shorter hair the whole movie. His hair is not defining of him.
He had such short hair to remove a wig.
Yeah.
Because normally a wig removal is, I have like a different color hair, or I have shorter long hair underneath. To be like, look at this, I had slightly shorter hair than this short hair. I'm like, oh.
Okay, we're really putting a hat on this one, huh?
All right. Nothing about this movie worked, and I'm so mad at it.
Yeah.
The only thing I liked about this movie is that we didn't end up paying to see it.
That's fantastic.
Can you imagine how much more upsetting this would be if we'd paid $25 to see this film?
I would have been furious. Frankly, even having watched it on Disney Plus, there were moments where I was like, do we stop watching this and then maybe reschedule what we do on the podcast?
I think for the first time ever, genuinely thought we should turn off a movie. Yeah.
All right, well, let's go in for the close. Let's ask the final question of what would you change? I'll try to narrow it down more than everything. But let's ask the final question of what would you change? Now that we've discussed everything we discussed, what would you change about this movie if you could change anything? Before we do, we will remind you, if you haven't already, please rate, review, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. It helps support the show. It helps us move up the rankings. It helps us get recommended to new people. It's a few minutes out of your day. It's a free thing to do. It helps us out a bunch.
We love reviews. We read them. They warm our hearts. Other people read them. They listen to our show. Everything clicks together. It's all good stuff. Thank you so much for reviews, people who have left them.
We love it. And if you want to get extra content from us, you can check us out over on Patreon. Patreon's a monthly subscription service where you subscribe at whatever value you can afford. You can do as little as $1 a month. Don't think that's too little or it feels silly.
Oh,
Sincerely,
it adds up, you guys.
The $1 patrons, y'all are badasses. That adds up and makes a huge difference in our life in this network and helps us grow and expand and really helps us focus on what we're doing. So check it out. At different levels, you'll get different bonuses. At the $10 hero level, you get an exclusive episode of this podcast every single month. That's just for our patrons. This month, we did the first Twilight movie. We'd never seen Twilight before. It is insane. Vampires play baseball and they sparkle. And I went in knowing nothing about Twilight. And
it's a fun bad movie.
It is fun. It is fun bad. That is fun bad.
It's a fun bad movie.
That's available right now over on the Patreon. And when you sign up at that level, you get access to the full back catalog of exclusive episodes. It's awesome. And you're not locked in. You can cancel or change your level on any given month. If it's in the budget, go check it out. Patreon.com/FromSuperheroes. That's Patreon.com/FromSuperheroes. And now, let's ask the final question of what would you change? Diana, what would you change?
3 big ones. The mom lives. There is no son. We can still keep the trench scene. Someone else will do it. I don't know. Ray Fiennes does the trench scene because the trench scene's amazing. There is no son. We don't have this back and forth about if you can go to war, if there's pacifism, if you're an underage honeypot. None of this. It's just Ray Fiennes is starting the Kingsmen with his wife who lives. And I think that's going to cut like 35 minutes out of this film. So I like that. Because nothing with the son mattered. It didn't work. It's just, let's have World War I adventures is what this movie should be. You don't need anything with the sun. And then my third little change is I think the cane should be a mislead and he never needed it. People just think he did because he got shot in the leg and he always was able to fight. And I think that would even actually make the Rasputin scene kind of funny of him trying to heal his leg even though it's a lie that it is hurt. Of him being like, oh yeah, it feels so much better. So these are my quick changes that but also funner missions. Like nothing works. Like a cool mission, I don't even care. So yeah, get rid of the son, wife is alive, and just make the Kingsmen. Just do Kingsman shit. Those are my big ones. Andrew, what would you change in this masterpiece of cinema?
You cut the first 30 minutes right away.
Love that.
So my big premise is wife is alive. It's Ralph Fiennes. It's Ralph Fiennes' character. It's the Oxfords. So it's husband and wife, and he is a survivor of wars in Africa and is a pacifist. And his son wants to go off to fight and win honor. We just start the movie there, and he hasn't already formed the Kingsmen.
Oh, okay.
He's a pacifist who thinks I don't like war, and the alternative and the successful alternative is to not do anything. And then his son does this thing, switches identity, goes off to war, dies. That's the inciting incident then, where the Oxfords, him and his wife, are both like, we've lost our heir, and we need to do something with our privilege because we thought the alternative to war was sitting it out, and that didn't save our son. So what we need to do is prevent war. We need to end it quicker. And that's the starting incident for the Kingsmen. And then I think this ending scene that the movie has actually seems like a fun Kingsman. When it is Aaron Taylor Johnson is the actor that
who takes over for him?
Yeah, the one the Scottish soldier who swaps places. But at the end of the movie, when they're like, we're starting the Kingsmen, Aaron Taylor Johnson is there, clearly intended to be like, if this got another movie, would be the star of the next one. I like a star swap. I like the idea that it's made like the son is the lead character, dies. Aaron Taylor Johnson is now the new lead of the movie.
They literally swapped identities.
Yes. So
it's actually kind of fun.
I think that's a really fun premise. It gets a cool new star in there. They had Stanley Tucci as the American guy. That's a get and awesome, and he should be here right away because if Ralph Fiennes is who was it in the first two? Colin Firth. Yeah. If Ralph Fiennes is the Colin Firth, I think Stanley Tucci is exactly an American accent Mark Strong. He is that, I am fun, I am paternal, but I am, wise but cool. And then Aaron Taylor Johnson is the Taron Egerton energy. So I want a totally different Kingsman where it starts with this identity swap going off to war. Death of the son is the inciting incident. Aaron Taylor Johnson is now the lead of this movie where we have Stanley Tucci and we have this Kingsmen, and that ending scene really bothered me when they're like, these are the Kingsmen, these people are the Kingsmen, because the clothing shop is in this movie, and they have this line at the beginning of the movie where Ralph Fiennes is like, if the people in this clothing shop conspired, the people who come here are the most powerful people in the world. And none of the Kingsmen are any of the people who went to the clothing shop?
None of them. No, just his friend who died.
So I think it is him at the clothing shop after the death of his son, and Stanley Tucci is there. Other heads of state are there. They form the Kingsmen. And then you move forward from there. That's what I think is the movie. And then Rasputin has less, and obviously less homophobic and incredibly uncomfortable shit. And we make silly characters out of every other historical figure. If Rasputin's a caricature, we go bigger. Lenin is now a caricature. Woodrow Wilson's a caricature. Every single thing is a caricature, and we go bananas with it.
I really like that, because if the Kingsmen truly are just forming, then they are successful if they don't stop anything until the very end.
That's right.
If we've only formed the Kingsmen 6 months before the war actually ends, then our first mission is a huge success.
Yeah.
But if we've been the Kingsmen through the whole thing, we're no good.
Love it.
It works.
Love it. We fixed it. I think that is more than enough for Kingsman. We are going to be back next week talking about Morbius, so come back next week to check that out. In the meantime, if you want to get a hold of us, you can reach me on Twitter at Ivimey, Ivimey.
You can reach me at Words of Diana.
And you can reach both of us at From Superheroes, and we'll see y'all next week.
Bye.